Barefoot and hungry, she pleaded for a hot meal, and what happened next will shock you. She had not planned to beg that evening. In fact, she had promised herself she never would again. But hunger has a way of breaking promises, especially when it stays with you for days and nights without rest. The girl stood at the corner of the street as the sky slowly turned dark. The city lights came on one by one, but none of them seemed meant for her. Cars passed, people laughed, shops buzzed with life, yet she felt invisible, as if she did not belong to the same world. Her feet were bare, dirty, and swollen. Each step she took sent a sharp pain through her body, but she had stopped noticing it long ago. Hunger was louder than pain. She wrapped her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, though it did little to keep her warm. The cold had crept into her bones. Her stomach twisted and growled, reminding her that she had eaten nothing since the previous morning. She had tried to ignore it, telling herself she would find something soon. A scrap of bread, leftover rice, anything. But the day had passed with no luck. She looked at the cafe across the road. It was small, old, and nothing special, but warm light spilled from its windows. Inside, people sat at tables, eating hot food, talking, smiling. The smell of cooked spices and fresh bread floated into the air and reached her nose. It made her feel dizzy. For a moment, she closed her eyes and imagined what it would feel like to hold a warm plate, to eat without rushing, without fear that someone would snatch it away. Her heart began to pound. Going inside meant facing people. It meant risking rejection, harsh words, or being chased away. That had happened before, many times. Some people had shouted at her, some had called her names, some had acted as if she carried a disease. Each time it left a mark deeper than hunger. She told herself to walk away. She could try another place. She could wait until night and search through trash bins behind restaurants like she sometimes did. It was humiliating, but at least no one looked at her then. But her legs felt weak. Her hands shook. She knew she would not last much longer without food. Slowly, she crossed the road. Each step toward the cafe felt heavier than the last. When she reached the door, she stopped. Her reflection in the glass startled her. Her hair was messy, her face thin, her eyes tired and hollow. Dirt covered her feet and the lower part of her dress. She barely recognized herself. Once, she had cared about how she looked. Once, she had worried about small things like matching shoes or neat hair. That life felt like it belonged to someone else. She pushed the door open. The bell above it rang softly, but the sound felt loud to her ears. Conversations inside paused. A few people turned their heads. She felt their eyes on her, scanning her from head to toe. Heat rushed to her face and she wished she could disappear. She stood near the entrance, unsure where to go. The floor beneath her feet was warm, and that alone almost made her cry. She took a small step forward. I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely louder than a whisper. No one answered at first. A woman at a table frowned and turned back to her food. A man glanced at her and shook his head slightly. Someone sighed in annoyance. The girl swallowed hard. She forced herself to continue. "I haven't eaten," she said, still looking down at the floor. "If there's anything left, anything at all, I would be grateful." Her words came out fast, as if she feared she would lose courage if she stopped. She did not ask for money. She had learned not to. Food was all she wanted. Behind the counter, the cafe owner had been wiping a plate. He froze when he heard her voice. He looked up slowly and met her eyes. There was a long pause, so long that she was sure he would tell her to leave. She braced herself. The silence felt heavy. She could hear the clinking of dishes, the low hum of a fan, the sound of her own breathing. Her hands trembled as she held them together. Finally, the owner spoke. "How long have you been like this?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. People rarely asked her anything. Usually they only told her to go away. She hesitated, unsure how to answer. "A while," she said quietly. He studied her face, not with anger but with something else she couldn't quite name. Concern, maybe, or curiosity. She couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her that way. "You can't stand there barefoot in this cold," he said. His voice was firm but not cruel. "Come inside properly." A few customers shifted in their seats. Someone muttered under their breath. The girl took another step forward, unsure if she was allowed to. "I don't want to cause trouble," she said quickly. "If you don't have anything, I'll leave." The owner sighed. He set the plate down and walked around the counter. Up close she noticed the lines on his face, signs of long work days and little rest. He looked tired but not unkind. "Sit," he said, pointing to a small table near the wall. "I'll see what we can do." Her legs almost gave out with relief. She moved to the table and sat down carefully, as if afraid the chair might break or someone might stop her. She kept her hands in her lap and her eyes lowered. The warmth of the room slowly seeped into her body. She realized how cold she had been. Her fingers tingled as they warmed and her feet ached painfully now that they were no longer numb. She heard whispers around her. "Why let her in?" someone said softly. "She'll scare customers away. She should go to a shelter." Each word felt like a small cut, but she stayed silent. She had learned that defending herself only made things worse. The owner returned with a glass of water and placed it gently in front of her. "Drink," he said. She picked it up with both hands. The glass was warm and she held it for a moment before drinking, as if she wanted to feel it longer. The water soothed her dry throat. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated again. Her name felt like something fragile, something she had almost forgotten. Saying it out loud made everything feel real. "Amna," she said. "Where's your family, Amna?" he asked, lowering his voice so others couldn't hear. Her chest tightened. Family. The word carried too much weight. She shook her head slightly. "I don't have anyone." The owner nodded slowly, as if he understood more than she had said. He glanced toward the kitchen, then back at her. "I have some food that wasn't served," he said. "It's simple, but it's hot." Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. She blinked rapidly, ashamed. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll eat quickly. I won't bother anyone." "No rush," he said, "and you're not a bother." Those words hit her harder than hunger ever had. When the plate arrived, steam rose from it. Rice, vegetables, and a piece of bread. Nothing fancy, but to her it looked like a feast. For a second she just stared at it, afraid it might disappear. "Go on," the owner said gently. She picked up the spoon with shaking hands. The first bite burned her tongue, but she didn't care. The warmth spread through her body, and a quiet sound escaped her throat, halfway between a sigh and a sob. She ate slowly, forcing herself not to rush. She knew from experience that eating too fast after hunger only brought pain. As she ate, memories surfaced without her permission. A small kitchen, a table with chipped edges, a younger version of herself laughing while her mother cooked. She pushed the memories away. This was not the time. She was halfway through the meal when she noticed the cafe had grown quiet again. Some people were watching her. Others avoided looking at her at all. She kept her eyes on her plate. The owner leaned against the counter, watching her thoughtfully. There was something about her that didn't fit the usual stories people told themselves about those who begged. She didn't look dangerous. She didn't look lazy. She looked broken, tired, and young. When she finished eating, she pushed the plate away slightly and folded her hands again. "Thank you," she said. "I'll leave now." "Wait," he said. Her heart skipped. Had she done something wrong? "You don't have shoes," he said, as if stating a simple fact. She nodded. They wore out. He disappeared into the back for a moment and returned with an old pair of sandals. They were worn but clean. He placed them near her feet. "They're not new," he said, "but they'll protect you." She stared at them, stunned. No one had given her anything in a long time without expecting something in return. "I can't," she began. "Take them," he said. Slowly, she slipped her feet into the sandals. They were a little big, but they felt like a blessing. As she stood to leave, she felt something unfamiliar stirring inside her. It wasn't just relief from hunger. It was something else. A small, dangerous feeling she had learned to avoid. Hope. She stepped back out into the night, no longer barefoot, no longer hungry, but unaware that this small act of kindness was only the beginning of a chain of events that would turn her life in a direction she never imagined. Amna did not walk far after leaving the cafe. Her body was still weak, and even with food in her stomach, every step felt heavy. The sandals slapped softly against the road as she moved, a strange sound she was not used to hearing after so many days of bare feet. The night air was cold, but it did not bite as sharply as before. The warmth from the meal stayed with her, spreading slowly through her chest. She stopped under a streetlight and looked down at her feet. The sandals were old, the straps cracked in places, but to her they felt precious. She bent down and adjusted them carefully, afraid they might fall apart if she moved too roughly. When she stood again, she felt a tight ache behind her eyes. She wiped her face quickly. Crying in the open was dangerous. People noticed tears, and notice often led to trouble. She had no real place to go. Usually, she slept near an abandoned building a few streets away, where the wall blocked some of the wind. She decided to head there. As she walked, her mind kept drifting back to the cafe. The owner's calm voice, the way he had looked at her without anger, the words, "You're not a bother," echoed again and again in her head. She had heard many things in her life, but never that. That night she slept more deeply than she had in weeks. Her stomach was full, her feet were protected, and for the first time in a long while she did not wake up shaking from cold every hour. Still, her sleep was not peaceful. Dreams came, heavy and confusing. Faces from her past appeared and disappeared. Voices called her name. She woke before dawn with her heart racing. As the sky began to lighten, Amna sat up and hugged her knees. Morning always brought fear. During the day, people asked questions. Police cars passed. Shop owners chased her away from doorways. Night was quieter. Night hid her, but she could not stay hidden forever. She spent the morning walking slowly through familiar streets, keeping her head down. She searched for odd jobs like she always did. Sometimes shopkeepers let her sweep floors or carry boxes in exchange for food. Most of the time, they waved her away before she could speak. By afternoon, hunger returned, though not as sharply as before. She drank water from a public tap and rested in the shade of a tree. Her thoughts drifted back to the cafe again. She told herself it was foolish. Kind moments were rare and fragile. They ended quickly. Expecting more only led to disappointment. But as the sun began to set, her feet carried her back there almost without her noticing. She stood across the road and watched the cafe for a long time. The lights were on again. People came and went. Laughter spilled out when the door opened. She felt the familiar pull of hunger mixed with fear. She did not want to beg again. She did not want to be chased away after thinking she was welcome. She turned to leave. Amna. Her name stopped her like a hand on her shoulder. She turned slowly. The cafe owner stood in the doorway, wiping his hands on a cloth. He looked around, then gestured for her to come closer. "You didn't eat today, did you?" he asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Come in," he said. "We're closing soon." Inside, the cafe was quieter than the night before. Only 2 tables were occupied. She stood near the door, unsure if she was really allowed this time. "I don't want free food again," she said quickly. "I can work, I can clean." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fine, you can help me stack chairs." Relief washed over her. She moved quickly, carefully lifting chairs and placing them where he showed her. Her arms ached, but she did not complain. Pain was familiar. This kind of work felt different. It felt earned. When they were done, he handed her a plate. It was smaller than the night before, but still warm. "Sit," he said. She ate quietly while he cleaned the counter. When she finished, she pushed the plate aside and waited, unsure what came next. "Where do you sleep?" he asked. She stiffened. Questions about sleeping places often led to being told to move, to disappear. Still, she answered honestly. "Near the old warehouse." He frowned. "That's not safe," she shrugged. "Nowhere is." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I can't offer much." But I need help in the mornings, cleaning, chopping vegetables. I can pay a little, enough for food." Her heart began to pound. Offers like this did not come often, and when they did, they usually hid something unpleasant underneath. "I don't have papers," she said carefully. "And I can't stay all day." "That's fine," he replied. "I just need someone reliable." Reliable. The word felt strange. No one had called her that in years. "What's your name?" she asked, realizing she did not know it. "Rashid," he said. She nodded, committing it to memory. That night she returned to the warehouse with a strange mix of fear and excitement twisting in her chest. She had something to wake up for now. Something that was not just survival. The next morning, she arrived at the cafe before sunrise. Rashid was already there, unlocking the door. He raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You're early," he said. She shrugged. "I didn't want to be late." He handed her an apron and showed her where to wash her hands. The tasks were simple, but she focused on them with full attention. She swept floors, wiped tables, peeled vegetables. Her fingers were slow at first, stiff from cold and years of rough work, but she did not stop. As days passed, a routine formed. She worked in the mornings, ate one proper meal a day, and left before the lunch rush. Rashid paid her a small amount just as he promised. It was not much, but it was honest. She saved most of it, hiding the coins carefully. Some customers noticed her. A few looked at her with suspicion. Others barely noticed her at all. One woman complained quietly to Rashid, asking why someone like that was allowed in the kitchen. Rashid did not answer her. Amna heard the words anyway. They burned, but she kept working. Slowly, her body grew stronger. The hollow feeling in her stomach eased. The color returned to her face. She washed her clothes when she could, keeping them as clean as possible. Small changes, but they mattered. One morning, while washing cups, she overheard two customers talking about a woman who had gone missing years ago. The details were vague, but something in the story made her hands tremble. She spilled water on the floor. Rashid noticed. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded too quickly. "Just tired." But her heart raced. The past was not as far away as she pretended. It followed her like a shadow, quiet but patient. That afternoon, as she prepared to leave, Rashid stopped her. "You don't have to rush out every day," he said. "If you want to rest here sometimes, it's fine." She looked at him, unsure what to say. Trust did not come easily. But something in his tone was steady, not demanding. "Thank you," she said. As she stepped back into the street, she felt that same dangerous feeling again. Hope. It was growing now, stronger, harder to ignore. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that hope always came with a price. Amna's days slowly began to change, though she did not notice it at first. Change came quietly, not like a sudden miracle, but like water dripping on stone, shaping it little by little. Each morning she walked to the cafe before sunrise, the streets still half asleep. The city looked different at that hour. Quieter, softer, less judgmental. She liked those early moments best. The sky slowly turning from dark to pale blue, birds calling from wires. The smell of bread starting to rise from nearby kitchens. It reminded her of another time in her life, long before hunger and fear became normal. Inside the cafe, she worked without being asked. She already knew what needed to be done. Sweep the floor, wipe the tables, rinse the vegetables. Rashid noticed this. He did not praise her loudly, but sometimes he nodded, and that was enough. She did not need applause. She needed stability. With regular food, her body grew stronger. The constant shaking in her hands eased. The dull ache in her head faded. Her thoughts became clearer, and with clarity came memories she had been pushing away for years. Sometimes, while washing dishes, her mind drifted back to her old life. Not the painful parts at first, but the small, gentle moments. Sitting on the floor with her younger brother, sharing tea from chipped cups. Helping her mother fold clothes. Walking to school with a bag full of books and dreams. She remembered how she used to love learning, how she believed education would save her. Then came the memories she hated, the arguments, the wrong trust. The night she left home thinking she would return soon, the promise that broke everything. She forced herself to stay in the present, thinking too much was dangerous. The past had teeth. One afternoon, as she cleaned the shelves, the bell above the cafe door rang. She did not look up at first. Customers came and went all day. But then she heard a voice that made her freeze. It was a woman's voice, sharp, familiar. Amna's chest tightened. Slowly she raised her head. The woman stood near the counter, dressed neatly, her hair tied back, her eyes alert and searching. For a moment, they did not recognize each other. Then the woman's gaze landed on Amna's face and something changed. Recognition flashed like lightning. Amna's hands began to tremble. She dropped the cloth she was holding. The sound seemed too loud in the quiet cafe. The woman frowned. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She took a step closer. "Amna," she said. The name hit her like a blow. Rashid looked up from the register. "You know her?" he asked. The woman hesitated, then smiled tightly. "We used to," she said, "a long time ago." Amna felt the room spinning. She wanted to run. Her legs begged her to move, to escape before questions started. But her feet stayed rooted to the floor. The woman studied her closely now. The clean apron, the tired eyes, the posture of someone who had learned to survive quietly. "I thought you disappeared," the woman said. Amna swallowed. "I did." There was a pause filled with things unsaid. The woman glanced at Rashid again. "You employ her?" she asked. "Yes," Rashid replied calmly. "She helps here in the mornings." The woman's lips pressed together. "Interesting." Amna felt exposed, as if her skin had been peeled away. This woman knew things Amna had buried deep. If she spoke, everything could fall apart. The woman placed her order and moved to a table, but her eyes kept drifting back to Amna, watching, measuring. Amna worked with shaking hands until the woman finally left. The bell rang again and silence filled the room. Amna leaned against the counter, dizzy. Rashid noticed immediately. "Sit down," he said. She shook her head. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine," he said gently. She sat. "Who was that?" he asked. Amna stared at the floor. Her throat felt tight. She had avoided this moment for years. Telling her story meant opening wounds that had never healed. "She knew me before," Amna said finally. "Before I ended up on the streets." Rashid waited. He did not push. "I had a family," she continued, her voice quiet. "I had a home. I went to school. I thought my life was going somewhere." Her hands clenched in her lap. "I trusted someone I shouldn't have," she said. "I left home because I believed things would get better. They didn't." Rashid listened without interruption. "I tried to go back," she said, "but too much had changed. I was ashamed. I didn't know how to explain myself. One mistake became many, and then there was nowhere left to go." Silence followed. "I don't cause trouble," she added quickly. "I work hard, I stay quiet, I just want to survive." Rashid looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Everyone has a past. It doesn't erase who you are now." Her eyes filled with tears. She wiped them away angrily. Crying felt weak. She had learned to be strong. But strength, she was realizing, did not always mean silence. After that day, something shifted. Amna became more aware of how fragile her situation was. One word from the wrong person could undo everything she had built. She watched the door carefully now. Every unfamiliar face made her tense. The woman returned a few days later, sitting at the same table. This time she did not speak to Amna, but when she left, she paused near Rashid. "You should be careful," the woman said softly, thinking Amna could not hear. "People don't end up like that without reasons." Rashid's voice was steady. "I decide who works here." The woman left without another word. Amna heard everything. That night she did not sleep. Fear crawled through her thoughts. What if Rashid believed the rumors? What if the woman returned with others? What if the small, safe space she had found collapsed? By morning, she had made a decision. When Rashid arrived, he found a note on the counter. It was written in careful, uneven handwriting. "Thank you for everything. I don't want to bring trouble to your door. I will not come back. Rashid read it twice. He looked around the empty cafe. Something felt wrong. He stepped outside and scanned the street. A few meters away, he saw Amna walking fast, her shoulders hunched, trying not to look back. "Amna," he called. She stopped. He walked up to her. "Where are you going?" "Anywhere else," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't stay." "Why?" he asked. "You heard her," Amna said. "People talk. I don't want to ruin this place for you." Rashid shook his head. "Running won't protect you, it just keeps you small." Her eyes filled again. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand," he said. She hesitated. Then slowly she lifted her chin. "I'm tired of being afraid," she said, "but I don't know how to stop." Rashid looked at her, really looked at her. Not as a worker, not as someone to be pitied, but as a person standing at the edge of something important. "Then don't run today," he said. "Just today." Amna stood there, caught between the past that hunted her and the fragile future trying to take shape. She did not know that the choice she made in that moment would soon force her to face her past fully and change everything she believed about herself. Amna did not run that day. She stood on the street with Rashid, the morning light spreading slowly around them, and for the first time in years she chose not to disappear. The decision felt heavy, like stepping onto thin ice. One wrong move and everything could break. Still, she turned back with him and walked into the cafe. The day passed quietly, but the quiet felt tense. Amna noticed every sound, every glance. The bell above the door made her heart jump each time it rang. She kept expecting the woman to return or someone else from her past to walk in and point at her, to pull her life apart with words. Rashid worked as usual, steady and calm. He did not treat her differently. That, more than anything, helped her breathe. In the afternoon, after the lunch rush ended, Rashid closed the cafe early. He turned the sign on the door and locked it. Amna watched him, confused. "We need to talk," he said. Her stomach tightened. She nodded and sat at the small table near the wall, the same one where she had eaten her first meal days ago. Rashid made tea and placed a cup in front of her. "You don't owe me your story," he said. "But if people from your past show up, I need to know what I'm dealing with." Amna stared into the tea. The steam fogged her eyes. She began slowly, choosing simple words. She talked about her childhood, about school and dreams that once felt possible. She spoke of leaving home, trusting the wrong people, and losing everything step by step. She did not blame anyone. She did not defend herself. She simply told the truth as she remembered it. "I didn't plan to end up like this," she said. "But once you fall, it's hard to climb back up. People stop seeing you as human." Rashid listened without interruption. When she finished, he sat quietly for a long moment. "You made mistakes," he said finally. "So has everyone I know. That doesn't cancel your worth." Her chest tightened. "That woman," she said, "she knows people. She can make things difficult." "Let her try," Rashid replied. "This is my cafe." The days that followed were harder than before. The woman did return, and this time she brought another person with her. They sat and whispered, watching Amna openly. Word spread quickly in small neighborhoods. Amna could feel it. Conversation stopped when she walked by. Eyes followed her. One morning, a supplier pulled Rashid aside and spoke in a low voice. Later, Rashid found Amna in the kitchen. "Someone warned me," he said. "They said keeping you here might hurt business." Amna felt her heart sink. "I understand," she said quickly. "I can leave." Rashid shook his head. "I didn't say that." "But you might have to," she said. "I won't fight you." He looked at her, surprised by her calm. "You've changed," he said. She smiled faintly. "I'm tired of begging to exist." That night Amna could not sleep. She lay awake, staring at the broken ceiling of the warehouse. Fear whispered to her, telling her she would lose everything again. But another voice, quieter but stronger, reminded her of the girl she once was. The girl who wanted more than survival. The next day, something unexpected happened. A woman entered the cafe just before closing. She was older, dressed simply, with tired eyes that held kindness. She ordered tea and sat quietly. When Amna brought the cup, the woman smiled. "You're doing well here," she said softly. Amna nodded, unsure. "I know what it's like to start over," the woman continued. "People don't make it easy." Before Amna could reply, the woman placed some money on the table, more than the cost of tea. "For honesty," she said. "And courage." She left before Amna could speak. That moment mattered more than the money. It reminded Amna that not everyone believed the worst. Still, pressure continued to build. One evening, Rashid called Amna aside again. "I can protect you here," he said. "But only to a point. If things get worse, I don't want you to be trapped." Amna understood what he meant. Safety could not depend on one place, one person. If she wanted real change, she had to stand on her own. "I want to try something," she said. Rashid raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" "I want to face it," she said. "All of it. No hiding." The following week, Amna took a step she had avoided for years. She visited a local community center. The building was old, the paint peeling, but inside were people who listened. She spoke to a counselor, her hands shaking, her voice unsteady. She told her story again, this time with more detail. It was not easy. Some questions hurt. Some memories felt too heavy. But for the first time, she was not alone while carrying them. She began attending regular sessions. Slowly, she learned how to speak without shame, how to separate her mistakes from her identity, how to imagine a future without fear controlling every step. Back at the cafe, she worked harder than ever. She arrived early, left late, and took on more responsibility. Rashid noticed. He began teaching her how to manage the counter, how to talk to suppliers, how to calculate daily costs. "You're smart," he said one evening. "You just forgot." One afternoon, the woman from Amna's past returned alone. She stood at the counter looking uncomfortable. "I heard you're doing better," she said. Amna met her gaze. "I am." There was a pause. "I was wrong to judge," the woman said quietly. "Life doesn't spare anyone." Amna nodded. She did not feel victory. She felt release. When the woman left, Amna realized her hands were steady. The fear that once ruled her had loosened its grip. That night, as she walked back to the warehouse, the city felt different again. Not kinder, not easier, but manageable. She knew the road ahead was still long. Trust would take time. Stability would require effort. But she was no longer the barefoot girl begging for a meal. She was someone rebuilding, step by step. And though she did not know it yet, the hardest part of her journey was almost over. The change did not happen overnight. It came slowly, like dawn replacing darkness without making noise. Amna kept working at the cafe, but her life was no longer limited to those walls. She still slept near the warehouse for a while, but she no longer felt trapped there. Each morning she woke with purpose, not just the need to survive another day. The community center became part of her routine. At first, she spoke very little there. Listening felt safer. She heard stories from others who had fallen and were trying to rise again. Some had lost homes, some had lost families, some had lost themselves for a long time. She realized her pain was not unique, but that did not make it smaller. It made it shared. And shared pain felt lighter. Week by week, she began to speak more. Her voice shook less. Her eyes lifted more often. She learned how to explain her past without drowning in it. She learned that shame grew stronger in silence but weaker in the open. Rashid noticed the change before she did. She stood straighter now. She met customers' eyes. She spoke clearly. When problems came up at the cafe, she handled them calmly. Once, when a supplier was late and upset, she talked him down without raising her voice. Rashid watched from the side, surprised and proud. "You've grown," he told her one evening as they closed the cafe together. She smiled. "I think I'm remembering who I was." A few months passed. With the small money she saved, Amna rented a tiny room near the community center. It had one window, a thin mattress and peeling walls, but it was hers. The first night she slept there, she lay awake for hours, listening to the quiet. No fear of being chased away. No need to keep one eye open. She cried silently, pressing her face into the pillow, not from sadness but from relief. The next morning she cleaned the room carefully, as if cleaning her own life. She placed her few belongings neatly in one corner. She opened the window and let fresh air in. It felt like a beginning. At the cafe, Rashid slowly gave her more responsibility. He trusted her with opening and closing. He taught her how to keep records, how to order supplies, how to plan for busy days. Sometimes he asked her opinion before making decisions. One afternoon he surprised her. "I'm thinking of expanding," he said. "Maybe a second location someday." Her eyes widened. "That's big." "I know," he said, "and I can't do it alone." She understood what he was offering, not charity, partnership. "I'll need time," she said honestly. "I'm still learning," he smiled. "That's all I ask." Not everyone approved. Some people still whispered, some looked at her with doubt, but their voices mattered less now. She had built something stronger inside herself. One evening as she walked home, she saw a girl sitting near the sidewalk, barefoot, thin, hungry eyes. The sight stopped Amna in her tracks. It was like looking into a mirror of her past. She hesitated only for a moment before approaching. "Are you hungry?" Amna asked gently. The girl nodded, wary. Amna brought her to the cafe. She gave her food, warm water, and clean sandals from a box Rashid kept for emergencies. She did not promise miracles. She did not judge. She simply helped. Later that night, Amna sat alone in her room thinking. The circle felt complete in a way she could not explain. Time continued to move forward. The cafe became busier. Amna's confidence grew. She enrolled in evening classes through the community center, learning basic business skills. Studying was hard after long days of work, but she welcomed the challenge. Learning reminded her that her mind was still sharp, still capable. 1 year after the night she first stepped into the cafe barefoot and shaking, Rashid closed early again. He placed a small envelope on the table. "What's this?" Amna asked. "Open it," he said. Inside was a simple agreement, a small share in the cafe, not a gift but recognition. "You earned this," Rashid said. "I couldn't have done this year without you." Amna's hands trembled as she held the paper. She thought of the girl she had been, standing at the door, afraid to ask for leftovers. She thought of the nights on cold concrete. She thought of the shame she carried like a second skin. She signed. That evening she stood outside the cafe and watched people walk past. The same street, the same lights, but everything felt different. She was no longer invisible. Later, she visited the warehouse one last time. She stood quietly, remembering the nights she had spent there, broken and afraid. She did not hate that place. It had kept her alive, but she did not belong there anymore. As she walked away, she felt something settle inside her. Peace. Her story did not end with applause or sudden wealth. It ended with dignity, with work, with choice. The barefoot, hungry girl had not been saved by a miracle. She had been seen, and once seen she had learned to stand, and that made all the difference.